leveraging assets to advance the mission of the church. We've been doing it for 169 years. The organization is the oldest church building society in the United States, having done more than 4,000 church building projects of all kinds. And we currently have projects and loan partners in 24 states. And our mission, our newly redefined mission out of our development of our 3-year plan that started in January. We work according to 3-year plans at the fund. It's to build stable, thriving communities that live the gospel by providing United Church of Christ congregations and other Christian organizations with real estate financing, operational resources, and expertise. And even though financing is in our name, a lot of our work goes into operational resources and expertise, doing things like this, working with churches. We categorize our work in 4 areas: plan, raise, finance, and build. And toward that end, we recently did our first impact report. And we've decided that we would move to an impact way of metrics as opposed to a arithmetic, sort of project oriented metrics where we count how many loans we've done, and we want to be concerned with what's the impact that we've had. And through our plan and raise programs, our level set was the last 7 years. We've helped through those programs churches raise almost $16 million in capital campaigns, and we've trained lots and lots of folks, typically around 300 or 400 a year in churches around the country. In our finance impact, obviously our loan program, almost 47 million in loans in the past 7 years, 55 congregations. During the first part of COVID, 11 churches refinanced their loans. We pride ourselves on the gospel mission of good news to the poor, and 16 of our loans were in census tracts, more than 50% below the 200% federal poverty level. And those of you who are familiar with those statistics know what that means. For everybody else, this is serving communities that are at risk or disadvantaged. And 46 missions funded through gifted fees. So far we know as far as we know, we're the only organization that does this through our capital campaigns. When we help churches with capital campaigns, we gift a portion of our fees to organizations that the church selects. And through that, we help 46 organizations that we never knew before, which is an interesting stat, since 2015 when we started that program. Our build area, plan, raise, finance, build, is really about 3 major programs. The Odesse Fellows, which is a field building program where we develop leaders who are already have an idea of a church in transformation and bring a venture with them to continue that transformation. So we've trained 26 leaders since 2018. We just started our 3rd cohort of Odesse Fellows. Our Redeem initiative, where we take a neighborhood approach of redevelopment, and our most recent example is in St. Louis, where we helped do a community plan for the north central area of St. Louis. And the physical building, it happens in our Partners in Vision program, where we help churches with large and or complex church building projects. And just to show you our Partners in Vision initiative, in the first 7 years, we worked on over 600 acres of property with 232 buildings. Our first 2 projects were finished. During COVID, we had construction projects in COVID, and our applications have skyrocketed. We did about 20 something applications in that program since its founding. And then in the first part of 2020, in all of 2020, we got 21. So we're now working with about 30 churches who are looking at uh, complex or large projects, which include affordable housing, community development, schools, retreat centers, a number of organizations. You can see on the bottom, this is in our impact report. We can share this with you. We've worked with the United Methodist Women on a portfolio of national portfolio of projects, as well as a retreat center, as well as individual congregations. And we'll share some examples of our work. And we talked about the Odesse Fellows, which is a spiritual entrepreneurship program. One of our fellows in the United Church of Canada is now about to purchase a major business in home health care, and we're talking with them about helping with that. But most of the ventures are not quite that large, although they're an array of spiritual ventures and these are folks, some are clergy, some are lay people, some have church-related ventures, some are not, but all of their ventures really advance the mission of the church. So we're very pleased with the field building aspect of the work. That just tells you a little bit about what we do. But here are the questions that David and Don kind of shared with me that seem to be something important to you, and you can verify that as we go on the question and answer period. But how do we have conversations about using church space with community partners? You have a lovely campus with several buildings. Some of it is, I understand, is well utilized, and other parts are not. And as I understand it, you are thinking about mission-aligned ways to use the space, and that's important, and that's the direction that we advise all churches to go into. But these are real questions. How do we achieve a balance between inviting people to become missional partners as opposed to thinking of people as objects of mission? How do we deconstruct our current understanding of membership? And perhaps you have other questions. I invite you to, if you're thinking about it now, write it down, and we'll talk about them at the end, or as questions cross your mind. They're no dumb questions. We may not be able to answer them, but we invite your questions. But these are very important. But rather than jumping into just answering, I want to just share a way of thinking about these questions. And we begin our work with churches right here, helping us congregations think about the why of your church, the mission. The why is big, right? It includes your mission, which is very much a statement of your why, but it also includes vision, the vision that you have for a transformed future, your understanding of scriptures, your relationship and understanding of community, your theology. You could probably even include your politics, your economic status. But as a congregation, the thing that's most important when we're thinking about a building project is not the bricks and mortar. It's not the steel and the construction or the developer or whether you should do this kind of purpose or another. The most important thing that a church can do is to get laser focused on your why. And as in our travels, I thought about this some time ago. There is a spectrum of church types, and what you see on the left and the right are they're not either or. It's sort of like a range, and of course this is a way of thinking about churches, so it's more generic than specific. So no church will be all of one or the other. Most, if not all, many churches, if not all churches, are a combination of types. And so let me just explain that. The two sort of poles to this spectrum would be community of worship or locus of ministry. And here's the distinction. In a community of worship, right, that's a congregation that has occasional liturgical gatherings. And what that means is They meet on Sundays. They might have a prayer meeting or something and during the week. And they have worship on Ash Wednesday and Easter Sunday and Good Friday and Holy Thursday and some other days, but that's pretty much it. In a community of worship, authorized clergy lead everything, or most things. In the United Church of Christ, although every church I visit thinks, many of them think that they're the model of the United Church of Christ. Don knows this. If you travel the country, you will find that there is no model United Church of Christ. We are truly an amalgam of all kinds of churches. You can't even say white churches do this and Samoan churches do that and black churches do this, and that, you know, there are distinctions within distinctions. So, but in many congregational churches, the understanding is that the clergy are over the worship and stuff, and the lay leadership is over the budget and all those kinds of things. That is a distinction we find in the United Church of Christ. Oh, I spilled my water on my electronic notebook. That's not a good thing. All right. Faith formation is by instruction, Sunday school, church school. Service is contingent, which means that, and I advanced this slide too quickly, which means that a community of worship will have times to do service to the community, but it's, you know, maybe we'll do a mission trip to a country or give some money to this one or offer turkeys on Thanksgiving or baskets on Easter, but it's not, it's sort of, as you know, it's sort of a side activity that happens when it happens, right? Place is agnostic, doesn't matter. You hear churches, especially new ones, oftentimes say, well, where do you want to build? Now, anywhere. I just want this kind of space. And their revenue is primarily giving and fundraising. That's a community of worship. That looks like a lot of churches. But then there's this locus of ministry, the congregation as a sort of a headquarters for ministry, right? It has frequent multivalent gatherings, which means many different types. Some are worship, some are not, some are civic, some are community, some are service driven. There are all kinds of activities all during the week. There's a range of leadership types, lay clergy, expert help is needed, bringing a consultant or a certain kind of speaker to do this kind of work. Faith formation is by engagement, which means, yeah, there's probably Sunday school and other things, but there's an understanding that we learn about, we build and grow our faith through our work, to being engaged. Service is focused. These are churches that have a clear understanding of their why, and every program kind of connects with it. It's an expression of mission and vision and all that kind of stuff. And the place is specific and ethos driven, which means that the church understands they are serving a particular community. They have a sense of their place and role in that community. There's connections throughout the community. There's a certain ethos. You know it when you see it, right? And Union is probably has this where union, or this is a union thing. And a locus of ministry has many streams of income, including giving and fundraising. And you saw the next slide. If you're thinking about this in the extreme, community worship should not just spend a lot of money on developing buildings, because it's only driven by, it's not driven by mission, right? Because you can worship anywhere. You don't really have that many activities. The building's not used a lot. Why invest in a lot of building uses? But a church that leans more towards locus of ministry or wants to go that way, investment of that type is justified, because there's very few things you can do on a building these days that isn't a lot of money. Right? I mean, Gone are the days when you can just go to the hardware store, buy some wood and put on a extra room. I mean, you're talking a lot of money, an investment, probably financed. And if you're doing as many churches, and I'm not suggesting this, I'm just telling you a trend, but many churches, a third of the churches in our Partners in Vision program, about 25 to 30 churches right now, a third of them are looking at housing as a use of property, either as a new use or as a use of a property that they maybe they have a building on and don't have buildings on and they want to redevelop. They now you're looking at large sums of money with that comes from many sources, but with a mission alignment. That's the kind of investment that a church can, a locus of ministry would engage in, because they understand mission in a different kind of way. So now, if you think about that spectrum of community of worship or locus of ministry, those questions kind of have a different frame, a different sense. How do we have conversations about using church space with community partners? Well, if you're a locus of ministry, right, you're engaged with the community. So those conversations ought to be happening in a way that are almost organic. If not, then it's that the type of church you want to be, because these are, I don't want to suggest that these types are static. Churches can move back and forth in the spectrum, right? So, and I would hope that if a community of worship would want to move towards becoming a locus of ministry, but there are churches that are content being just a community of worship. We just want to meet on Sunday and Wednesdays, and that's it. We're not going to do much more. Hey, that's wonderful. It's who you want to be that. But depending on who you are or who you want to be, these questions take on a different tone. If you just want to worship every couple of days a week and leave it alone, you're not really thinking that much about community partners, except maybe to invite them in. Achieving a balance between inviting people to become missional partners rather than thinking of people as objects of mission. You see how that's different depending on who you are as a church. How do we deconstruct our current understanding of membership? Well, listen, that's happening for us. If you read the Barna research and others, and I'm sure you've read it, talking about the nuns, and not N-U-N-S, but N-O-N-E-S. Everybody likes to talk about the nuns and how people are unchurched and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that's totally the story. I think people are looking for a new thing. So yeah, the old thing is fading away under its own weight. It's been a durable model for a long time. So we don't have to deconstruct our current understanding of membership. People are doing that for us. Point is, membership isn't as important as it used to be. It really is about what's the community that we're serving, and how does that community support that church, some of which may not be quote unquote members. Just something to think about, and I hope this is pushing your thinking. So let me just share with you, I'm going to stop talking a little bit, and a few of the churches we're working with. Two of them are more or less urban or inner city churches, and two of them are suburbs. I want to suggest we only work with one kind of church. Resurrected Life Community Church is a new UCC church in Allentown, Pennsylvania, that is expanding its schools. They have two schools. They're operating through their building, their community building. They're expanding from serving 112 to 175 students, and they're rebuilding their entire campus. They had underutilized land and buildings, but it's where they are. They purposely select. This is a new church, it's about 10 years old, maybe about 15 years old. But when they bought their building, they looked for the lowest income census tract in Allentown. They intentionally looked for it and located there because they had a mission that they wanted to be a blessing in that community. And if ratchet forward to where they are today, they're doing just that. We're helping them, and they're gonna, their financing will come together this year. We refinanced their original debt, and we're helping them as owners representatives build out this vision, where we're helping them get a developer, and we've helped them with the pre-development so that they can expand their schools. It's going to create additional income generating opportunities, and their church is growing. It's a growing church. And actually, we go down there in March. They're actually, churches are going to gift them another building, a church that's closing, because they're known for being an active church, and this church is closing, and they want to donate to a church that's doing a great work in Allentown. St. Peter's United Church of Christ are probably our most transformative project. This is a church that owns a city block 5 minutes from downtown Louisville, in the poorest community in Louisville. We just helped them finish a $7.8 million commercial retail facility on their property. And you say, well, why would they build a commercial and retail facility? Well, because there was no restaurant. There's no sit-down restaurant in the community. They haven't had a bank in the community in 50 years. So they built this office retail with a clinic, a daycare center, a bank, a restaurant, a coffee shop, a real estate agent, and they have office space on the top floor. They're 100% leased. And by the way, Resurrected Life's membership is about 200. When we met St. Peter's, their membership was under 100 people. They're now at about 200 members. They're a small church, a small budget, but they serve 2,000 people a week in a range of programs for the community. And this is a very high need community. And we're coming out with a documentary on this project that we'll be glad to share with you. It'll be out in the next month or so. But we're very proud of this project, that it was completed during COVID, and the built out, and is now fully leased, and employed 100 new jobs, created 100 new jobs in the community, and generates $75,000 a year to the church. These are two suburban examples. This is a suburb of Oakland in a very diverse community. Genesis Worship Center is the one non-UCC church. We work with both United Church of Christ congregations and non-UCC churches. And they took their fellowship hall, small, maybe a half an acre site, but they had a fellowship building, and they turned it into 12 units of housing. They were going to do affordable housing, but then the county offered the church a $4.3 million grant to serve returning citizens. These are people returning from incarceration. And so now they house them in these 12 units of housing, and they also offer services. So this is a very interesting project. It was our first affordable housing project that's completed. We have several that are in the pre-development phase. Very proud of that project as well. And the last one is the suburban church. I've tried to find something similar to Union. This is in Palm Bay, Florida. I think demographically it's similar to Montclair, New Jersey. This is a church that, when they built their project about 15 years ago or so, or 20 years ago, the idea was, if you build it, they will come. And so they bought about 14 acres of land, and they didn't come. So they realized that they were land rich, and their debt was heavy for the size of the church. They was keeping up with it, but they realized it wasn't sustainable. So we worked with them, and they were interested in family housing. We worked with them. They didn't want to build the housing. So we helped them rezone the 10 of their 4 acres and subdivide it, got it all approved. When you rezone a property before selling it, it increases the value. So what was going to be about $500,000 appraised value, they got a $764,000. They were able to pay down almost all of their loan. And the other thing is, there's going to be 40 family houses that are in construction now, right next to their church. So they kind of built a neighborhood around them. A great church, a great example of a way forward that was new for them. And so those are some examples of how we work. That's my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing, and um, I'm glad to answer any questions. I hope I've touched on some of the things that you're thinking about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas as we continue. Thank you so much. You're muted. I can't hear. The Zoom is muted. The Zoom needs to be unmuted.
There you go.
Should I do that?
Yeah. You know, you're good. You're not good.
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Anyway, one question I had was in the locus of worship poll that you mentioned, there was multiple streams of income, not only fundraising and donations and so on. But as I understand it, and I don't understand these things as well as other people in this room, but we're a nonprofit organization, and we're limited in what we could do in terms of other fundraising streams. I mean, we can't, I can't see this church creating, retail space or anything like that on our property. I mean, how do you get around that? Do you create a separate for-profit entity that's part of the church, or how does that work?
Well, the one thing that's the first question that always comes up when we talk about streams of income. You ever hear Girl Scout cookies?
Yeah.
Those attorneys in the room may know that once upon a time, the Girl Scouts were sued by the big cookie companies because Girl Scout cookies, when they sell better than Oreos and all the brand name cookies. They're like the #1 selling cookie. The Girl Scouts won the suit. They won because it was very clear that this was not about cookie selling. It's a leadership development program. And the Girl Scouts had in their bylaws and in their mission, all of this writing it on their documents historically, all of this information about leadership development in girls. So their mission alignment with the enterprise is what won them this suit. Similar thing happened with the Y and another, I think it was, I don't remember the name of the other company, where the point is there are a lot of things that a church can do in terms of generating revenue that's mission aligned. And you can even do things that are not mission aligned, but your accountant, your lawyer will tell you, watch out for, is it UBIT, is it called? The unrelated business income tax. So if let's say you start selling union t-shirts, and your union t-shirts go from $500 a year to $1 million a year, you will have to pay tax because that unrelated business income is larger than, I don't know what your revenue is for you. I'm assuming, let's say it's less than $1 million, or it's even, let's say it's $250,000 and your budget is $1 million. It's a significant portion of your revenue. So therefore you're going to trigger unrelated business income taxes. Well, what do? You pay them. So you do have to be mindful. And I tell every church, whatever you're doing, it has to tie directly to your mission. And your mission should speak about it. Your vision should speak about it. Your bylaws should speak about it, so that when you're worried, it should tie so that it isn't unrelated to who you are. Second thing is, it does make sense for churches that are engaged in all kinds of activities outside of worship and others to have a separate nonprofit for a couple of reasons. One, you create that nonprofit also mission aligned, right, around the purposes you want to achieve, but you also open yourselves up to being able to secure it's easier to get philanthropic support from sources that might not give to a church. And it's also smart because it separates out church business from other business. So that's sort of I hope that answers the questions to a certain extent. We advise churches when they know they're going into a range of, community serving enterprises or affordable housing, whatever. We'll have churches that have to create a CDC, and then even the real estate project is its own LLC, right? Because you don't want to, protect the assets of, even if you have it in your nonprofit, you don't want, if something goes awry with the building project, to impact the financial situation of the nonprofit. So just a little bit.
So sort of the takeaway is that you can do all kinds of things as long as it's aligned with your mission, a stated mission.
Yes, and if you generate too much revenue from T-shirts or cookies or whatever, you might have to pay taxes on that income. So it's not like you would pay taxes on your giving, but and again, I'm not an accountant or a lawyer. I just know these things because we deal with it every day. So you're smart to have those working with you on that as well.
Yeah. One more quick question. Have you worked with many churches who have started doing a lot of arts presentation? I know that big city churches, say in New York, for example, often do a lot of that sort of thing. We're in the New York area. Have you seen any of the churches you've worked with start to do a lot of presentation of concerts, theater, things like that? That had a really significant impact on the health and the growth of those churches.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big thing in the major cities. You all may know Donna Scopper, who was at Judson Memorial in New York City, which is right next to NYU. They have dance performances. They do all kinds of stuff. They took the pews out of the sanctuary and made movable chairs. That space does all kinds of activities, arts, dance, stuff. A lot of churches do that because it's very related to, this is soul work, right? So, it's not a big leap for art to be connected to ministry, right? For all kinds of reasons.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So they can do it and they can collect revenue, basically sell tickets and stuff like that, and it works out. Because we've
absolutely
had a little trouble with that before, thinking that we had to only accept free will donations, not saying
no.
You whatever. You can do it.
I always advise you want an attorney that understands nonprofit law. They're out there. You probably have many in your area. How far are you from New York City? There's a ton of them. A lot of them probably live in Montclair, who can advise you, but it's not unusual. It's in fact, it's a smart way to go if you're thinking about a range of offerings that you want to do that sound more nonprofit than church. I would definitely go the nonprofit route, and I wouldn't worry about, as long as you structure it right, you're not going to have, it's not illegal, as churches think, for churches to generate revenue. In fact, it's smart in this day and age. You're always going to have giving, fundraisers. We like to do fundraisers. What else can you can rent space, right? For different uses.
You can do that already.
Yeah, you can do it for like long-term leases or short-term, or like, one-day events. I mean, there's many different ways that churches can generate revenue that I think, it's worth exploring. Just get the expert advice, lawyer, accountant, you'll be fine.
Thank you.
Yep.
We have a question from the Zoom room. I'm going to bring up Linda Hall. Linda, if you want to go ahead and ask your question, we'll see if we can hear it.
You muted yourself after you unmuted yourself.
Don't.
Just hit it once. You did it again. There you go. There you go.
So my question is generating revenue may not be our only goal, our missional goal.
Oh, I hope not.
What are other, you've already mentioned a few, but other creative uses of underutilized buildings and space that aren't necessarily for generating income.
Well, I would hope, great book to read. Paul Nixon, y'all probably know Paul Nixon. He did I Refuse to Lead a Dying Church. And then the second one was We Refused, past tense, to lead a dying church. He has so many examples of churches, and one synagogue, which I really love the example because it's Sixth and I. That's in I think is the name of it. It's on 6th Street and I Street in DC. They have a range of programming all week long. Some of it's obviously worship. Some of it is secular. Because they're in DC, they'll bring people from, this agency and this congressman and have dialogues. So whatever you think of, right? And I was suggesting to David an idea that I've been thinking about a lot. Listen, people are doing podcasts and video and need very good studio space for a not too big sum of money. You got room. You could set up a studio and rent it out sometimes, or host your own shows or whatever. Because that's listen, we're going to do this hybrid thing from now on. This is not going anywhere. It's the technology is only going to get better, and there'll be a few congregations that figure out, wow, we can do something with this. So, yes, there's a lot of different kinds of activities, and not all are revenue generating. In fact, somebody said they watched Sixth and I. The strategy that I love about Sixth and I is that they understood the value of having traffic in the buildings, having people in. So they have a person whose job it is to, they have slots during every day of the week. Their job is to just fill those slots. So by getting now, obviously we're not meeting as much, but we will again. But by getting all these activities, some of them are paid, some of them are free. Judson rents space. They have a market rate for NYU, but for the nonprofits, they have another rate. And some people use the space for free. So you don't want to get caught up in, you think of other streams of income. Financially, you need it, but it's not your goal. Your goal is to get as many a range of activities that advance your mission of all kinds coming through your space, to where people go, well, I got to go to Union because they're doing this. Or I got to go to Union because they have this speaker today. And I got to go to Union because that dance program. And all of a sudden now you're a locus. You probably already are. You got a daycare center. You got a school? I'm sorry, the daycare center, nursery school, and you got stuff going on already. But that's I hope that speaks to your question.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else in the assembly room? Have a question? You have a question? Yep. Linda, who's up? Anyone else? Oh, please. We have someone journeying from.
Thank you for a very thought-provoking presentation. One of the issues that you brought up is membership.
Yes.
And I'm just kind of curious about to me, it really is a question of self-identity. When in my mother's church, you were saved or you weren't. You belonged to Christ or you didn't. And I'm a little mixed up about how. I agree that the exclusivity of that was offensive, but how will we identify ourselves as Christians if our mission changes from bringing folks to Christ and a different way of life? into something broader like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is the question of the day. Yeah. So so really, it's not so much that churches are saying we don't care about membership anymore. It's more a cultural phenomenon across the board in terms of people, the generations changing, right? If you name any kind of organization that is a membership organization today, all of them are struggling. And it has more to do with the way people feel about institutions in general. And I think most of us would agree that there is a declining trust that we have in our culture around institutions in general. The church has been besmirched. And our standing in society, and depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on, you're blamed the other side. But the reality is, the church has a problem in terms of image. However, whether we agree or not agree, but that we have to accept that reality. But that's true of, the law as an institution. It's true of fraternities. I mean, listen, the Boy Scouts went into bankruptcy because they couldn't pay off all their lawsuits. I mean, you think membership, the idea of membership has been eroded by that, but it's also a different culture. What's more common among younger generations is the meetup, or the incidental cause where you can rally millions for a couple of days. That's it. So what do we do? Because I don't believe we should change our mission. I believe that the church should be about bringing people to Christ. But doesn't matter what I believe, right? It's how do I take this mission that I very much believe in, we very much believe in, and bring it into the marketplace? It has to look different. And so that's why I bring the example up of 6th and I, even though it's a synagogue. Their thinking is, well, we're not going to so much worry about people saying I'm a member, but we want to make sure we're bringing them in, exposing them to who we are, our culture, our mission. And then what's interesting is the churches that figure that out have big memberships. You know what I mean? When they realize that their task isn't to get members, but to stand in a certain kind of way in the community and have offerings that meet a range of needs. Because they're doing that, people want to be a part. And in that process, some people will literally join, or you might get people who never join, but they show up at everything. They want to help out with everything. They might even lead some things, So I think it's not really that we change who we are, but we change how we engage. I hope that's a helpful response to your question.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
These are great questions, by the way. You guys are really sharp.
Carlos? Oh, hang on, I just wanted to give the Zoom room the opportunity. Okay, nothing from the Zoom room. We're going to go ahead with Armin.
Hi, my name is Armin Touchstone. I've been a member here for over 40 years. And
I'm sorry, you say your name again? I didn't catch it.
Armin.
Armin? Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Been a member for over 40 years and been
God bless you.
and everything in this church for just about all of that time. I just want to say that some of what we're talking about, this church has done in abundance in the past, and I've seen a dwindling of that. There was a time where the administrator would have a schedule of 25 or 30 different organizations that were here. Anywhere from quilters that would sit upstairs here and quilt in the middle of Thursday afternoon, to the Oratorio Society, New Jersey Oratorio Society, giving incredible concerts in our
Yes.
Montclair Engineers would meet here. The Garden Club right now is about to come and meet here, but it has dwindled a lot. We even had one or two renters that their rent was counted as contribution to the church. And they would have apartments. We have two parsonages, and there'd be an apartment upstairs, and they'd be there. There's a lot of other things that this church would do that it just somehow dwindled down and gone away. And I don't know why that is. New Jersey Children's Choir would meet here. My daughter sang with them. They would have concerts here. There were a lot. And when I say 25 or 30 different organizations that were here, and the scheduling was a major. We had a counseling center. There was a very thriving counseling center on the second floor of this building that we're in right now. That was a great asset to the community, and was run by one of our members. And so we've seen a lot of that. Why that's gone away, I don't know. Some of it was because it was just inconvenient to us. Some of it, I would hear complaints that such and such a group used the space and they left it dirty, or they left it this way or that way. Alcoholics Anonymous would meet here on a regular basis in this very room. So I don't know what's happened to all of that. Why that tide has turned and gone a different direction. But that was always, I thought that was an incredible way for us to serve the community and to be visible to the community.
Oh, thank you, Arma. I think your perspective is precious. I mean, it is really valuable for a couple of reasons. One, what I hear in what you're saying is Union has in its DNA already, right, the capacity to open to community uses. It's not, you don't have to figure that out. And you listen, your perspective is so important because I think it's important for people to know that this is not new stuff you're talking about. You're talking about things that Union used to do and did well. But you also are pointing out something that many of us are going through, right? Especially, I've been part of my church for 27 years. You see the change. And the hard part of watching the change is that you feel like, what happened? I feel you, Armand. I feel what we used to do this. What happened? So I guess I'm pointing out that, listen, you're not alone in this, Armand. You're not alone in this. And this is part of what anyone who's a long-term part of an organization sees and feels. And there's no way to get around that. There's almost a sadness attached to what used to be. I'm not going to sit here and tell you there's an easy way to fix that. But what I can say is the things that you need to do. For example, think about counseling. You say you had a thriving counseling practice. Well, counseling has changed. I have friends who are psychotherapists, counselors. Because of COVID, they're 99% telemedicine now. Okay. So that's changed counseling. But you know what? Maybe some counselors would rather do telemed in a studio someplace, and maybe they will come back to people being seen in person as well as with telemedicine. So you might think about that. We have counseling in our DNA. the United Church of Christ of Annapolis has a counseling service. And I haven't checked in with them lately. We worked with them a few years ago. It was a thriving practice that they ran out of a house on their property. Now, I'm sure that's been impacted by COVID, but they've done counseling. So what is it that Union might do with counseling? And it can't be what it was when it was thriving. It's going to be something else. And I think you could look at all those activities and to do that kind of thing, because the people have changed. The way that people engage services have changed. The community has changed. The population has changed. The problems have changed. So what does that mean? We're not going to change from being a church, but we have to change how we engage in those services and things we want to do. And it's hard. But Armand, if I'm saying your name, what you point out that this is not easy. I don't want to suggest that, oh, you just snap your fingers. It takes some focus and some work and some figuring out and reaching out to people who are kind of in touch with the current way that things are happening in these types of interventions, like counseling. Every field has been impacted by technology in some kind of way, and a change in demographics and a change in community needs. It's about figuring out how we can find that niche that we can do what we used to do that's in our makeup, but do it in a new way. I pray that that's helpful. But believe me, I identify with your pain, and it's not, you're not alone, Armand. I don't know if that's helpful to you, but it's important to understand that perspective as we plan for the future.
We have one more question from Carlos.
Hi there, she said my name, Carlos. First of all, thank you so much. This has just been brilliant.
I'm glad.
One of the things I picked up is a concern from some members of our congregation that we won't be able to attract people who have come to see organized religion as a negative thing. And if there's a crucifix or a cross on the wall, or we have these incredible Tiffany stained glass windows in the sanctuary that picture all these Bible scenes, people don't want to be around that stuff. We, for whatever reason, reputation of Christianity has suffered. We talk about why some other time, but what are churches doing to, if you will, secularize the space to make it feel more comfortable for those who don't want to be in the church?
It's a great question. And I would say to you, it's true and it's not true. Society is become increasingly secular, but there's a trend within all of the major religions of younger people who are yearning for the older stuff, the traditions and stuff like this. That trend is a real trend, okay? And part of the challenge, right? Because, I mean, the world is increasingly secular, right? But there's also there are a lot of people who have a faith in God. Nuns are not non-religious. They don't like church. So the challenge is for how does Union find its place? And maybe you're not down with, let's take down the cross. Maybe you want to be unapologetic about, we love the Lord. So be that. But be that authentically and unashamedly, but be that what I think our country is calling for is people who are authentic Christians. I don't know about you, but that stuff I listen to our church. I go to many churches and I'm like, this not real. And we have to be clear about our message and who we are. It's not, we can't kind of say, well, going with the flow. Barna, again, I talk about Barna. I love and hate them at the same time. A few years ago, they had a survey on just this thing where churches thought since society is getting more secular, let's take the name, the Christ out of the name. Let's remove all the crosses and all that. And some churches went somewhere with that. Others didn't. So my suggestion to you is union has to be union. But you got to be union, understanding that to express your faith in a way that's welcoming to everyone. And I don't want to say that that's an easy thing, right? Maybe it's not by opening the conversation with the sinner's prayer. Maybe it's opening the conversation with, hello, my name is. How'd you like to come to an art show at Union? I mean, you know what I mean? And let that light shine. And not sort of, you know, it's kind of like, you know, first date kind of thing where you want to tell the person the first meeting, man, I love you. You're the love of my life. Maybe you want to like just have dinner. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I just want to invite Reverend Shaw to conclude.
Hey,
How are you, David?
I'm well. So the purpose of our gathering this afternoon is now with, how many do we have in here? 25 or so, 30? There's 22 on Zoom, so 50, 55 people gathered together to generate conversation. Well, there's a generative conversation. I'm pretty sure this session will generate conversation.
Oh, that's
You
good.
did your job.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. You did your job in this. So we are incredibly grateful for your time. Willing to spend an hour plus with us. Plus, other folks may not know that we spent some time prepping for this session during the week. You conversed with Kim in between. So a lot went into getting ready for today. We're really grateful for your time, your energy, your devotion, and your expertise. We are going to clap. I'm going to say that on behalf of everyone. We're going to clap for you in appreciation for your spending time today. Thank you.
Thank you all.